All right, so we're going to get started. Just real quick to just recap where we are. The board voted last night, Tuesday night, to recess our workshop and postpone our agenda until tonight. So we're picking up literally right where we left off yesterday. There are a few things that will be different for today, and I think we'll be able to just indicate to those people that are joining us that we have simultaneous interpretation available today, which is something that we've not done before. And I think that's all I had to set us up. I'll hand it over to the superintendent so he can pick up where we left off and maybe recap on the whole setup of the workshop versus agenda.
Have we opened up?
There's nobody in.
I didn't realize that. I wasn't looking at that.
Yeah, there's nobody in attendance yet. So, Greg, you want me to open us up? I'm going to open us up.
Yeah. Thank you.
I also don't see the Facebook.
Yeah, that's true.
Greg's going to do that. So, Roberto, maybe you want to go do your little thing again?
Sure. Should we wait till we're...
Yeah, probably wait a couple minutes. We are now live on Facebook.
All right. So people are starting to join us on the participants list. So I'll get us started. We're gonna, excuse me, just to recap. Last night the board voted to recess our workshop and postpone our board meeting until tonight. So we're going to pick up right where we left off at the workshop presentation, which was finishing with the programming section. But I did want to let everyone know that tonight we have simultaneous interpretation available in several languages, and I think the superintendent will give us a little bit more info about that when he sets us up in a moment. So having said that, Superintendent, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming back for part 2 of the workshop and then the subsequent board meeting. As Chair Rodriguez mentioned, we do have simultaneous interpretation going today. So if you are in the audience among the attendees, we have a chat message in the chat there, I understand, that associates our actual languages with the languages that are available on Zoom. Zoom does not have the same languages available as we have. Some are the same, but some are not. So if you would, Spanish and Portuguese are the same. The others are all different. So you can check the chat and see what the correlation is there. So we are going to dive right in and pick up where we left off yesterday. We spent a considerable amount of time last night going through a number of different sections of our proposal, and today we have another 4 very important sections that we need to go through. So with that, I am going to put up the PowerPoint and turn it over to our Executive Director for Communications and Community Partnerships, Grace Valenzuela and Dr. Valenzuela. As soon as I get this up, you are good to go.
Good evening, everybody. Greg, I just want to make sure that Juliana is now promoted as a panelist. So we continue to have conversations. Javier, could you move the next slide?
Yep, give me a second here.
We continue to have conversations with many of our community partners who can help enrich the educational experience of our students and to assist families, including our own staff, with wraparound care for their children. There are some questions that we still need to answer. Having an approved plan is one that would help us and our partners to move forward. Next slide, please. We are looking at offering 2 types of programming from our partners for the first 4 weeks of school when elementary students are on hybrid schedule. The first programming is for before and after school. Having a shortened day would help families who need childcare support so that they have a regular work day. We have 2 confirmed partners, Portland Parks and Rec and Boys and Girls Club, who together can serve about 500 plus students. The second programming is an all-day program on days when students are on remote schedule. We are prioritizing this service to children of our Portland Public Schools staff so that they are able to work. At this time, we have 3 potential partners: Breakwater Enrichment Program, Jewish Community Alliance, and Portland Community Squash. And among this program, we have 62 slots available. I want to underscore that we are working with other partners to help address barriers such as space and transportation so we can increase the number of slots in these programs. Next slide, please. This slide shows this infographic shows the student support plan from Portland Rec for their before and after school programs for students who are on an in-person schedule. Before school program for Rec is from 7 to 8:30. Because of the early school start, which is 7:45 at Lyseth, Presumscott, Reiki, and Rowe, they cannot offer before school programming at these sites.
Grace?
After school programming.
Grace, it seems
Yes.
like we're getting in the Q&A and chat that people aren't able to get on with Facebook, or it's not on Facebook. Just wanted to, the meeting's not yet on Facebook.
Greg, can you work on that and then just go ahead, Grace, and we'll work on trying to get that fixed. Okay.
Okay, thanks.
So after school programming starts at either 12:30 or 1:30, depending on the school's dismissal time. And these programs end at 5:30. Portland Rec can also provide an all-day programming at 3 schools on Wednesdays. The costs for these programs are listed on the infographic. Next slide, please.
So we're done with that section then, Grace?
No, and I will have, before the questions, I have the communication and family engagement. Yeah.
No, do you want to do both of them together and then
Yes.
we'll pause?
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
All right. Sorry.
The Family Engagement Work Group reviewed the quantitative data from the parent survey conducted end of May, as well as the qualitative data generated from 5 family focus group sessions conducted in late May and early June. Major themes from these data sets include the following. Parents, particularly those who are essential workers, need consistent all-day childcare to allow them to go to work during the weekday. Families ask for consistency in tools and platforms used across the district. This will help them feel less overwhelmed and burdened by technology. Parents and guardians also want to be able to support their children's academic work at home. They want some training and support to successfully assist their children with remote digital learning. Parents are aware that teachers are busy and they don't want to unnecessarily bother them with frequent emails and want some structure for communication loop. Next slide, please. So based on these recommendations from the Communications Work Group and Family Engagement Work Group, we have developed the following. School reopening video. So we have produced a school reopening video. It is in English and it's also in 8 major languages. We are also producing video on demand. These are how-to sessions for technology access, such as how do you access Google Classroom and other platforms, how to set up your hotspots, how to use Infinite Campus to check on students' grades, and others. The reopening guide draft that is part of the agenda guide tonight. It's included in today's agenda, and it will be finalized. So once we have finalized at the end of this meeting, for at the end of the week, we will have this PDF finalized, and the vital components of the guides will also be translated. We also have started an FAQ document. This will continue to be updated, and it will live on our website. HR has also developed a companion to our staff handbook. It's focused on protocols for different bargaining units and our responses to COVID-19. That guide will be ready, that staff handbook will be ready before staff arrives on Monday. We are currently building a website, and we're so close to getting it done. So I'm hoping that will also be ready by the end of this week. And the website is focused on school reopening. All the documents that you have, the reopening guide, any updates, the FAQs, and staff handbook will be on this website. And we will also be hosting district back-to-school family orientation nights to provide more details on the reopening, health and safety protocols, and the learning experience of our students. For multilingual families, our plan is to host 2 sessions for those families who need interpretation. So to accommodate the different availability of families, we are holding one session at 9:00 a.m. on August 26th, and another one on August 28th at 6:00 p.m. For multilingual parents, workshop presentation is the best way to provide information. This allows for back and forth with questions and answers, time for clarification, and providing context, which are helpful than getting just a written document. And through Parent University, we will be offering training on the use of technology platforms, Seesaw and Google Classroom, on September 1st and September 3rd at 5:30 p.m. Those training workshops will be also interpreted. We will continue to use our Tuesday staff bulletin, our staff and community monthly newsletter, and social media tools as platforms for sending out information. Our phone helpline in different languages remains open. You can call our helpline at 874-8159. Families can leave a message in English, Acholi, Arabic, French, Khmer, Portuguese, Somali, Spanish, and Vietnamese. They can also send an email in English and other languages at ppshelpline@portlandschools.org. I recognize that communication with multilingual families is critical, particularly at this time. The Multilingual Center has been doing this work for over 30 years, and over time, we have learned how to be strategic in communicating with families. I invite Juliana Bean and Betsy Paz-Gemesi, 2 of our parent community specialists, to talk about how we've been doing this communication. Juliana? Is she in?
She is, but we're not hearing her. Can maybe Betsy get started?
Yeah, Betsy, could you get started? And let's figure out why Juliana can't speak.
We can't hear Betsy either. I think this has to do with the fact that they're set up as interpreters. So can you stop being interpreters for a minute and then get back on to that?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that, Javier?
If you could disconnect Betsy and Juliana from interpretation, then I think they would rejoin us as panelists and would be able to speak. And I don't know that for a fact. I'm just hoping that that's what happens.
And while we're waiting for them, I think I can talk about the next. Oh, are you there?
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
yes.
Juliana. Can you hear me too?
Yes.
you can.
So to add to what Grace was just saying, one of the reasons that we have strategically been disseminating information to the families is majorly to not confuse the families, because if you think about it, just in the last year alone, we had over 1,026 translations that went out to multilingual families in all of our 9 languages that we mostly translate documents in. And multiple schools are sending multiple messages, sometimes customized messages, and some families have children in 3 different schools. So in order to make sure that the families get the right information at the right time, so we do school messengers with recorded messages for those families that aren't able to read. We send WhatsApp text messages. We send WhatsApp audio messages for those families who do not have credit on their phones, but are able to access Wi-Fi with their phones and listen to those voice messages that we leave on their WhatsApp. We also divide up the number of families amongst our languages groups, and we send individual messages to the families. We don't just copy everyone so that people can see each other's numbers. We are very keen to keeping confidentiality. So we are using several different platforms to distribute information that we use with the families. And one thing that I don't know that everyone understands, to some of these families, we are a lifeline. They might not have any other supports. They might not qualify for a case manager. So parent community specialists have been somewhat doing a little bit of everything, especially during this time of pandemic. So some of these families keep calling us day and night. We are on 24/7 because we know, because in order for us to reach them, we need to be reachable as well. So, one of the very important things that we've learned doing this work is to duplicate district-wide events in small groups with our communities of multilingual families, because a lot of times it's very confusing to listen to all possibilities, and families have relayed to us, we would like to get a gist, we would like to get a summary of what is being put on the table, and then talk to us and get our opinion, and then we'll tell you what we want to do. Like we just did the survey about back to school. Some of the families were calling us saying, look, this is really long. I couldn't figure it out. Can you just tell me what is it asking? And then we're telling them, we're asking you if you would like your child to be in school in person, or if you would like your child to be just learning remotely. Oh, that's what it was. Yes. So a lot of times it's very confusing to families. And also, one of the things I wanted to say, not all the parents are working conventional hours. So we have to give them options for trainings and things that we're doing, because a lot of these parents are getting home at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. So Betsy, I'll let you add.
I think you covered it pretty well. I think, what's important to stress here is the relationship that parent community specialists have with the families. I hear it all, and I've gotten many phone calls this last week of basically desperation of parents who are really there. I'm not going to tell you they're not scared. They're nervous, they're scared to send their children, but they need to send their children to school. They need this help because, they don't have jobs. They don't have the luxury that some of us have where we can work from home or take a family leave. These parents do not. So school really is a lifeline for these parents. And in the way with the information, we have really, like Juliana explained, we actually disseminate information very differently because we really understand our communities that well. So I think, you know, as far as going back to school, I can tell you the majority of the families I have spoken to, they're scared, but they want to send their children because they need to send their children. So I think we touched, right? Todo? I think that was it. Anything else, Grace, that, did we forget anything that?
I think the phone contact.
Oh, the phone contact. So that's something also with our families. They do not usually respond well with email. Many of them do not have email. So a lot of the time, their preferred method of contact is the phone, because we translate, we send things home, and even with all of that translated and sent home, I will still get the phone calls. And people just prefer to have that one-on-one, explain it to me, and that real, I don't think I have any families that tell me, send me an email. I don't have one. Everything is call me. And most of them do have phones, I will say. And since they are all doubled up, I have a family who has a communal phone. So they all help pay the cost of a phone so that they have access to making phone calls. But it is the preferred method of contact. That's why we use WhatsApp, because it doesn't require a phone plan.
And a lot of times for those families, and I will tell you, like, we get a lot of tickets from schools, and sometimes families are unreachable, but we know the aunt or the neighbor or the babysitter, and then we will get a message across so that family can call us. So that is one of the ways that we have a very special view of all the families that we take care of, multilingual families, because we see them across grade spans and across schools. So the district-wide view.
Yeah. So we do get to know, like, you can ask me, hey, do you know so-and-so? And I'm like, oh yeah, they're the cousin of this person. And Juliana's right. Like, when I can't reach someone, I'll know who the family member is. So it's just a different way of communication, but I think it's a way of communication that works. It works for our families. So.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Betsy and Juliana, I want to underscore that in working with, you know, the cultures that we work with, where they come from, most of them come from high context cultures that really, really need this exchange. So low context cultures take it, something in documents, and you read it, and that's all the information that they have is there. That is not for for people who come from high context cultures. So that's how it is, explained. So the next one I have is the signage, and they have all been developed and printed. And could you move to the next slide, Javier? We need to be back on the slides.
I think something happened along the way. Aaron, did you take over from me? Because I'm seeing it has not changed at all, but I got a message at some point that said that Aaron Townsend is now the co-host.
I will drive right now.
Okay.
So could you do the next slide, Aaron?
Coming.
So these are ones that we developed. They're branded for Portland Public Schools. These are signage that will go up in front. And when we toured, I don't know if you noticed them, when we toured East End School, the mask was required The please use hand sanitizer were up in front of the school. So it's the sanitizer one is next to the sanitizing station. Next slide, please. The safety protocol, wash your hands, will be in our lavatories. And also in our hallways will be this, please, just a reminder about physical distancing. And we also have signages on the floor, reminding children and students and staff about physical distancing. And I just want to show you the, can I share screen, Aaron? I just want to show you the, the video that we have produced.
We've prepared our buildings for the start of another school year, and we're excited to have your children rejoin in the fall. We want to demonstrate a few new procedures we have in place around your child's safety. We'd like to show you a few of the safety procedures we have at the elementary schools. The older students will have similar procedures at their schools that are age appropriate.
Before your child leaves your house, parents should complete the daily symptom self-screening check. Children who do not exhibit any symptom on the checklist can go to school. Keep your child home if they present with any of the symptoms. Don't forget to bring your mask. You have to wear a mask to board the school bus and to enter school. For students taking the yellow school bus, families should go to their designated bus stop. Students should line up at their bus stop observing physical distancing requirements. As students enter the bus, they should walk to the furthest seat available in the back, sitting one per seat unless they're siblings. Then they can sit together. If you are driving your children to school, please follow the signs for designated areas for parent drop-off and pickup. When your student arrives at school, there will be signage and staff to help guide them to the proper entrance. Students line up observing physical distancing protocols before entering the building through one of the designated entrances. A good way for students to check if they are far enough apart is to extend their arms and make sure that they cannot touch anyone around them. As students enter the building, they will be asked to sanitize their hands at one of the hand sanitizing stations. From there, they will then walk in a physically distanced line to their classrooms. Depending on your student's classroom, they will either be separated 3 feet apart via tables or desks, or with dividers on tables to make sure that safe social distancing occurs in the classroom. Students will find their materials underneath their desk or table in a bag or container to make sure that supplies are specific to that individual student and not being touched by multiple students. Hand washing breaks will be observed at various times during the day. Breakfast and snacks will be delivered to each classroom, where students will then eat at their table. They will take off their masks to eat, but must stay 6 feet apart when their masks are off. Breakfast and snack may be taken outside for both a mask break and snack. Only the bottle filling option will be available at our water fountains. Students should bring a water bottle to school with their name on it to use during the day. Each student will be assigned a bathroom to use. Bathrooms will be cleaned frequently between use. Students will be escorted out to their bus line or to the parent pickup area following physical distancing protocol.
Thank you so much for sharing this information with your children before they come to school. The health and safety of everyone depends on all of us doing our parts. We're excited to return to in-person classroom learning. For more information on what the district is doing to keep your children safe, please visit us at our website, portlandschools.org. Have a great school year, everyone.
So that's the English, and this will be in 8 different other languages. Sorry. Sorry, Greg, could you put back Betsy and Juliana as interpreters?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So I think that's the end of my section, Javier.
Thank you. Thank you, Grace. And I also want to thank Betsy and Juliana and all of the community specialists. They are an amazing group of people that do the most incredible work for the district. And I'm always, I've been in many other districts that have large multilingual populations, and I can tell you that in no place that I've been have we had a team that is as dedicated, as well organized and committed to the work that they're doing as our team is. And so I'm incredibly proud of them, and just you guys are amazing. So thank you.
Greg, Monique, it's also need to get in. Monique Mutumwinka.
Okay.
Thank you.
So with that, any questions that you have about both our community partnerships as well as the parent and community engagement and communication that Grace just walked through?
Do we have any questions, board members? Remember to use the raise your hand feature on Zoom so I can see you. There's a lot of panelists. All right, let's go to Ms. Morioni.
Thank you, Chair. I also just want to say I'm just immensely grateful for all the hard work that's been put into this. Grace, your whole team of all of the interpreters. I'm just blown away. It's just amazing, and I'm so happy to see you all, your faces, even by Zoom, because even board members we don't often see you, and you're behind us doing all this hard work all the time. So thank you so much, and staying so close to our families is critical. So thank you. I just wanted to ask Grace about, you had mentioned around the district back to school family orientation nights. Can you just give a little bit more slowly about, you mentioned some dates, and I wasn't sure if that's for certain schools or elementary, middle, high, just more of a breakdown on those nights and make sure this is clear.
Yes, so I know I got that comment also from one of our parent community specialists. You are speaking fast, I can't interpret. And so, yes, so we are planning, so next week, we want to do this as quickly as possible because parents are asking questions. So we want to engage them immediately. And so next week, our plan for multilingual families, 26th and the 28th. So one at 9 o'clock, that's August 26th at 9, and August 28th at 6 o'clock. These are for multilingual parents. Specifically, we have Carlos Gomez to explain programming for IELD, because that's also a different program for them. They are supposed to be in school for 4 days a week. So there are all those kinds of information that we need to provide for them. So this will be an explanation of how we're opening schools, particularly related to safety protocols, the app, the screening before coming to school. All of those things will be explained to them for these 2 sessions. And then we have the parent kind of training for the use of technology for all parents. This is also one of the recommendations that we got feedback from parents in terms of, we want to know how to understand how to use all of this technology, not when we are already in the classroom, but before the classroom starts. So we are scheduling at 5:30 p.m. September 1st and September 2nd, the training for Seesaw and Google Classroom for these 2 dates. Schools will have their specific orientation, back to school orientation for families. We are coordinating the dates for those schools so that Aaron, Assistant Superintendent Townsend and I just talked about this to make sure that schools are not going to be holding their back to school orientation at the same time. Otherwise, we won't be able to send interpreters for those sessions. So we know, like for tomorrow, Deering High School already is set up for their, orientation for Deering families. So that's so those are layers of different ways that we could provide family orientation.
Great.
Does that answer your question, Marnie?
It does. Thank you so much, Grace. And one more clarifying question is around the helpline. Are you going to delineate when people need help with school-related matters to make sure it's not medical questions on the helpline?
The helpline, I don't remember that we got any, Nana, did we get any? We did not, right? So I think most of the questions we got last year were related to academics in the helpline and technology questions.
Yeah, I only mention it just in case people do, they have a symptom and they want to know, should they send that to someone there to answer those types of questions and or refer them to their physician or refer them to the Greater Portland Health. I don't know, just thinking.
So the helpline, the helpline is leave a message and we call them back. And so that's how it's set up right now. Nobody's there waiting for the call. It's sort of like it goes to and we check that every day. And interestingly, last spring, the busiest lines are the multilingual lines. There were very few people in the English line. So it's a busy one.
Thank you so much. Thanks again to everyone.
Thank you, Ms. Morioni. Let's go to Ms. Bondo.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Grace, for the amazing presentation. And I just want to acknowledge my community specialists for the amazing time and work you've been doing. And sometimes we were undervalued sometimes you walk through the community, then you are the backbones are the multilingual families can navigate the education system, and I really respect what you're doing, and I hope we can try to see how we can value you more, and because we really understand now that you're playing the key role between being the bridge between the school and the families. This is amazing. This is amazing. And the question that I have, Grace, is about the community partners, because I see we have 500 spots between the Boys and Girls Clubs and I think the Park and Rec. So I want just to know how the selection will be done, because I know the other part is for the staff, but for the 500 spot that we have, how the selection will be done, and do we know how many so far, how many students or kids we may be able to serve? So that's my first question. Or you want me to just go all my questions so you can be able to answer, or we can go one by one?
I think one by one.
Okay.
So I better remember. So there are over 500 slots right now that we are saying safely for boys, between Boys and Girls Club and Portland Parks and Rec. And I want to underscore that this is just for elementary, because we're prioritizing elementary students. We're not talking about middle school. So we have 500 kids. The boys, the Portland Rec alone last year had an average of over 400, like 450 students that they had in their programming.
Mm-hmm.
So that's sort of like, I'm just mirroring what they had in terms of last year's registration for them, and in this plan.
Okay, so how's the selection will be happening from our side today?
So the registration will go to these, we have not moved to that, but definitely the application for Portland Rec is going to be, is accessible, but they're waiting for us in terms of what our plans are.
Okay. All right, thank you. My second question is about, I heard Betsy and explaining how they've been communicating with parents, multilingual parents, using WhatsApp, using your different connections, surrounding friends and families. And I think when they talk about WhatsApp, it's mostly about internet. You need to be able to have something internet so you can use your WhatsApp if you don't have any credit for your phone. So how they were feeling, because we've been giving some of those families the hotspot, and I know then the hotspot is not doing any streamline video, so it's going to be a hard time for those families to get those videos. So I just want to get a sense with them if they had some feedback from families using that one, if it was easy to reach out those families by WhatsApp, because they're just using WhatsApp as a communication tool.
Anyone want to answer that, Nana, Betsy? I don't know if you're in. Anybody who can answer that question? Juliana?
I think they're back as interpreters, and they might not be able to.
Okay. Okay, that's fine. Maybe later on.
I know that it's a tool that is used mostly by our families, and that is one of the things that their choice of communication.
É a escolha de comunicação deles.
Sorry. Okay. Juliana, are you back in? I can hear you.
You can hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So when we communicate with families, I can speak for the ones that I normally communicate with, which is Portuguese and Spanish-speaking families. Their response is that send me this via WhatsApp or use WhatsApp. So they've been reading texts that we send, and so in WhatsApp you can send recorded audio voice messages, and they've been accessing those as well. And when they're talking back to us, that's how they send communication to us. I do get responses via email, but I will say that it's probably 2 to 8.
Okay. All right, so this is for the multilingual families, but I know we have a lot of low-income families, disadvantaged families, or mainstream families who have the same issues by communication. They cannot use emails, or they have issues to get some messages. So what kind of strategy we have overall? Because I see we're going to use the messenger so they can check the temperature and checking all the symptoms on the phone, or sending some of those communication online, or checking on the website. So what kind of specific approach or strategy we have with those families, then we have a hard time to reach from the low income and disadvantaged families? What we do?
So our school messenger system has different ways of accessing families. One is for via phone, another is via email, and the new one that we have to access them is via text. So those are 3 ways that we use regularly now for communicating with all families.
So everything is going okay, because those are going to start using often. Yes.
Yeah, we have to really use all of these different platforms, because some people prefer text, some people prefer.
And and I will add, Grace, using a combination of platforms, I think is what has been working best for our center.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. And my third question is on I think all the outline you just mentioned on the communication part. I mean, the videos and all the stuff. I didn't see, are we sending some of the protocol, the safety, because that's only the sign then we're going to put in the school for safety. Are we sending those for parents as well, so at least they know what's the different protocol? Because we heard yesterday from nurse Tina and Dr. Patterson, those different steps in case we have a symptoms and what the protocol, something if a child getting symptom in the birth. So do we have those kind of communication also then parents can have at front before the school starts?
Yeah, those are the ones that are the important pieces of the guide. They are in the guide, and those could live in the website. Okay. And also we have this, that we are developing this slide that will have the visual that accompanies, like, this is how you wash your hands, and that is in development as well. And the other thing that I want to say that I forgot, and that's why I really like having videos and pictures, is that we have not utilized our channel 3, and so these videos will live on the channel as well, because that is another way to reach families who, there are many families who watch channel 3.
Why I'm saying that, because I know for sure by experience then is a lot of family they cannot access our website, our school website, and how to navigate the school website. So when we have all the notifications, video, everything just stay on in the website. So you have just a specific group of parents who have a time and just can go and navigate that. And I think how can we do better to try to how we can reach out more parents? I mean, using other how can we improve that communication, especially around this critical time? Then we know if parents want to see video, it's not just from the website, but how we prioritize our channel, then they can watch from the TV. We prioritize also the WhatsApp. We can send those videos to WhatsApp. So the different tools, because I just hear about everything going to be on the school website. This is really struggle me the most, because we're going to have a hard time to reach out most of the parents, just showing them. Then they have to go to our website and look at it, because it's so difficult to navigate.
And when I say something on the website, it's also going to be on social media.
Okay.
Yeah, because a lot of people use social media, so we will use that platform. We get a lot of, audience followers on our social media platforms.
Okay, good. So I saw the video. I like the video. It's really giving a good approach. But the thing that I see, we have 17 schools, and we have East End, and I think they're doing a great job. And I try to understand, are we going to make some video for the middle school or high schools, or just we doing just for the elementary school, or are we planning to do more video showing also the middle schools what's going to happen when they enter the schools and the high schools as well?
I don't have that immediately on my list, but that's something that I can have conversation with the superintendent about.
And we need to think also about the special ed education, what's going to look like when they enter in the class, what exactly what's going to be. So I think parents need to start visualizing them and to see exactly what's going to reflect, and it's going to produce less fear and be more comfortable by watching those different steps.
I think that's a great idea, Ms. Bondo. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Greg. Thank you, Chair. I'm done.
Thank you, Ms. Bondo. Ms. Thompson?
Thank you, Chair. Grace, great job. Thank you. I have two quick questions. In case I missed it, video premiere is when? And what, will it be on the web and will it go out to parent? How is that going to happen?
So when people when schools have their orientation, they will have these as well. So the principals will have the link and use that in their orientation. during their back to school orientation. This will also live on our website. It will live on different platforms. Yeah.
Okay.
And I was thinking that the opening is now. This is the first time that we have it publicly. We just don't have a red carpet. So
this was the world premiere. Great job. And then Ms. Bondo already asked the question. I was going to ask you what number of slots would be ideal. So I think you talked about it was the 450 per rec. So I'm not going to ask that again. But then also our community partners you talked about, do they have any kind of computer setups, or would the students be traveling with an iPad or their laptops, and how's that going to work?
Yeah, it's probably going. We have to bring our own equipment, and eventually our kids will be one-on-one. Eventually, so not at the moment, but yeah.
Okay, so they'll have access there. You said. Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson. I don't see any other hands raised. I don't have my video on right now. My connection is really slow, and I was having trouble hearing some people, so I figured this will help me. Grace, I'm sorry. The slide that showed the time of the wraparound. How late does the after school programming run to? I'm sorry.
5:30.
5:30. Okay. I know there's a slide there, and I was trying to pull it up, and I missed it. All right. Don't see any more hands or any more questions. So I guess we can move on to the big part, the staffing piece. Superintendent.
Sorry about that. I do want to point out that today's PowerPoint is enhanced slightly from the one that was available yesterday. So if you go to Board Docs, there is a new one, and that's particularly important for these next two sections, the staffing and the budget section. So I just wanted to point that out. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Barbara Stoddard, our Executive Director of HR.
Good evening. Erin, if you could go forward to, yep, there we go. Great, thanks so much. So as Javier said, I did add some slides, and so we, in a few minutes, we'll jump forward to some data slides, but I want to do a little framing before we do that. As I stated at the last board meeting, no matter what reopening scenario we're under, when we're talking about our people, our highest priority is to protect the health, well-being, and safety of all of our staff and our students. So as you can see from this slide, we have received and we continue to receive a large number of requests for flexible work arrangements. As of this morning, we have received 269 requests from across the district. This is about 21% of our total regular staff. Roughly 40% of the requests we've received to date fall under the ADA, and 60% are not ADA related. As I shared at the last meeting, and to refresh your memory on these two types of requests, ADA requests are those covered by the Americans with Disabilities Act. These are employees whose requests are based on their own medical condition that would likely be considered a disability under the ADA. We have a legal obligation to engage these employees in a collaborative dialogue about what reasonable accommodations we might be able to put in place when they return to work. Accommodations for staff in this group range from ensuring that we're following all CDC and DOE safety protocols related to physical distancing, face covering, hand washing. It could include an assignment for remote work or a request for a leave of absence. For the non-ADA requests, there are two subgroups within that category. The first group are the requests from staff who have childcare issues. The majority of the requests in this category are asking for flexibility with their schedule as opposed to fully remote work, because they're juggling the schedule of their children's school with our staff schedule in the proposed hybrid scenario. The second group of non-ADA requests are from staff who don't themselves have a disability, but live with someone or care for someone who has a risk factor or a disability. Similar to the ADA requests, some employees in the non-ADA group have asked to work fully remotely, and some are asking for flexible work schedules. Others are also considering a request for a leave of absence. We have prioritized connecting with staff whose requests fall under the ADA, and there are 115 of those, because we have a legal obligation to do so. Yet our goal remains to connect with all staff who have submitted requests by the end of this week. As I mentioned at the last meeting, each of these requests are unique to the employee and their personal circumstances, and we're addressing each of them on a case-by-case basis, which can take quite a bit of time. We have further prioritized our employee contacts to focus on our teachers, and more specifically, classroom teachers, as understanding their needs and their plans is critical to our ability to staff properly and to reopen school. On the slide, you can see that we have 186 requests from teachers in the district. 155 of these are from classroom teachers. To further break down the figures by type of requests, we have 71 ADA-related requests and 84 non-ADA within this group of classroom teachers. All right, so we're going to jump and look at a little bit of data. I'm going to share it with you. I won't spend a ton of time there, and then during question we can go back and look at it. So Aaron, if you could go down to the next slide. So this is a district-wide snapshot of all requests to date. I know it's a lot of information. You can see that the total requests, there are 269 of them, and how they're spread across schools and departments. We have also broken down our PEA educators, as I was just mentioning, into two groups, classroom and non-classroom. The non-classroom group includes positions like therapeutic specialists, those would be OTs, PTs, and speech therapists, and social workers. It's not that these positions aren't critical, they are. It's just that we're trying to hone in on what's critical for reopening, and that would be staffing our classrooms. Could you move forward one, Aaron? Thank you. This shows the total number of requests district-wide of all PEA educators and ed techs. The percent that's showing on the right-hand side reflects the number as a percentage of the total requests. So you can see that the majority are made up, 87%, of these two groups. Go ahead and jump forward one more. So this is a deeper dive into our PEA staff with a breakdown of classroom teachers, and then one step more granular into the breakdown of ADA and non-ADA requests. As I mentioned earlier, we have prioritized gathering information from the 81 PEA educators who fall under the ADA. Okay, Aaron, if you would go back to slide 64. Thank you. So based on the data that's been collected from classroom teachers so far, we expect that 50 of these 71 classroom teachers who fall under the ADA will expect to work remotely. That's what they've requested. To solve part of the puzzle, we need the data on the number of students who will be fully remote to begin granting these requests. We expect to have a more detailed breakdown of the parent survey any day now, and the registrations are expected to be finalized for remote academies next Monday. We will be prioritizing placement in the remote academy for teachers whose requests fall under the ADA. We will also be using staff's current assignment and their credentials as objective ways to make these assignments. To provide an example of how this might play out, we could use these figures presented to gauge whether we might be able to accommodate staff requests for remote teaching. If we took the total number of teachers who made requests who fall under the ADA, and those ones who want to work remotely, so that's 50, and if we assume that each remote academy classroom has 20 students, then we would need to have roughly 1,000 students opt for remote learning to match these teachers to those classrooms. Now, we are assuming that this is a perfect match of teachers to students, but you get the rough idea there. If we then need to deny the requests of those teachers who are not covered by the ADA, and we've said there are 84 of those, and we make an assumption that 30% of those will opt for a leave of absence or decide to leave the district instead of returning to the classroom, we'd need to hire roughly 25 new classroom teachers to backfill their positions. We will also likely need to hire some teachers to backfill for a portion of the staff who are assigned to remote academy. So this gives you a glimpse of the potential hiring work that is needed to adequately staff our classrooms by September 14th. Can you jump to slide 68, please? Thank you. So let's shift over to the work that's ongoing. Our work this week, with the support of some consultants, is to gather more detailed information about whether staff are requesting to work fully remote or something else. And if the request is for fully remote work and the district is unable to meet that request, then let's talk about what the options are. We are prioritizing our staff contacts by focusing on the ADA-related requests, and we're focusing on teachers first, and then focusing even further on elementary and middle school. Once we have the data on students who will be fully remote, our academic department will be creating classrooms and then assigning teachers to those remote classrooms. Again, we're going to prioritize the placement of teachers whose requests fall under the ADA. It's possible that all of the available positions will be filled by the ADA group who have requested accommodations. Anyone not offered a slot in the remote academy will be meeting with them and having a conversation about what their options are. That could be returning to on-site work or requesting a leave of absence. As I mentioned earlier, we also have a large number of requests for flexible work arrangements related to childcare. We're working through those as well by having discussions with building administrators about what might work in their building to cover these less than full-time gaps of their classroom teachers. This could produce additional leaves of absence as well. If the board approves the superintendent's proposal for hybrid opening, we will move to assign and notify staff about their placement in the remote academy as soon as possible. Letters will be sent to all others who requested fully remote work, letting them know that we will likely be unable to meet their request and to discuss what other accommodations or options are available. At the same time, we're working through all of the non-fully remote requests with a great deal of support from our building administrators. These folks are discussing flexible work arrangements with staff in their building. Many of them have successfully developed these plans and have submitted them to HR for final approval. Our intention is to gather and process all of this information at the district level to review and make final decisions for all flexible work arrangements by the end of this week. I recognize that might not be possible to get through them all, and of course we won't have full of information yet about the remote academy until Monday. Let's talk a little bit about the staffing strategies. As I've already discussed, we'll have options for various types of leaves if we can't meet people's requests for flexible work arrangements. We have a few strategies for planning to backfill these leaves of absence. One part of that strategy includes a request that I've made to the leadership of the PEA to consider relaxing our contractual hiring requirements as we move to backfill any leaves. This would allow our hiring managers to backfill one-year-only positions more quickly and efficiently. Many building principals have had robust pools of candidates this hiring season, and they could access those pools for strong candidates who were not initially hired. Another piece of this strategy includes a conversation with the Maine Department of Education about teacher certification requirements. While it's always our preference to hire for fully certified teachers, we may not be in a position to do so this year. The DOE has indicated that, with the exception of special ed teachers, they would approve requests for certification waivers as long as the candidate holds a bachelor's degree. In terms of attracting candidates, we have put up 3 postings to build pools for hiring to backfill positions. 1 at the elementary level, 1 for middle school teachers, and 1 for K-12 ELL teachers. Yesterday, I put up another posting to attract a pool of candidates for long-term sub positions and for what we're calling dedicated building substitutes. These are subs that will be hired to support a specific building and will be on-site daily to provide classroom coverage and support. Both of these types of substitutes will help backfill shorter-term absences and vacancies. Finally, we'll also be hiring additional building support staff. These will be called building aides, and those hired for these positions will be on-site for 3 hours per day to assist with various student and school duties. We sent a notification to all of our current substitute teachers about these new positions. We'll also be using social media to get the word out, such as our Facebook page, LinkedIn, and Twitter, to advertise. That's my update on staffing issues related to reopening. I want people to understand that the conversations we're having with our staff about their requests for flexible work arrangements are time-consuming and can be very emotional. There are very few, if any, easy answers for any of these situations. We want staff to know that we care deeply about them and we're committed to working together to try to solve what's in front of us. I know that you have many outstanding questions, some of which I probably don't have the answers to just yet. That said, I'm happy to try and answer as many as possible.
Great, thank you, Barb. Board members, all right, we'll get right to it. Ms. Morioni.
Thank you so much, Ms. Stoddard. My question is regarding on the ADA requests. Do we already have parameters or definition of using the federal standard of ADA for deciding and vetting these requests? Or are the ones requesting this also needing to provide any type of physician information? Just curious the process.
For every person who submitted a request that falls under ADA, we have requested medical documentation and we are collecting that.
And do we already have a definition of what will be considered or approved for ADA?
Well, the law defines it.
Yeah.
And so again, they're case by case, and each of those will be discussed on an individual basis. And we have a back and forth conversation about what accommodation is being requested and whether we can meet it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Morioni. Mr. Burke?
Yes, thank you. Barbara, thank you. Thank you for your integrity and care you're bringing to this and being solution-oriented throughout. This is not easy at all. I think I have 2 questions, and they're about how do you feel? How do you feel about the timing and pacing of what you are charged with doing and being successful in doing that? And the second is just how do you feel as a human being tending to this process and to these requests?
So that's hard to respond to. And I'm not sure this is my place to tell you how I'm feeling. I'm in this role because I'm here to represent staff and to wear that hat. And obviously these are incredibly difficult decisions that we're balancing for our students and families and for our staff and their concerns. So the best I can do is to listen to each person, and we try to work through and find a solution. And there's a lot of moving parts when we're talking about each building and then across buildings. I'm not sure how to answer that question.
Fair enough on that one. How are you feeling about the pacing and time that you have to create solutions?
It's very challenging. Obviously, even just losing these 24 hours makes it hard. We do have people who are hesitant to tell us what they think they want to do because they don't know if we're reopening. And I understand that. And so the closer we get to the 24th and then to September, it's it's hard.
Thank you. And the other question, perhaps it's for you to answer, perhaps it's for somebody else, like the superintendent, but part of the plan is to hire conceivably less qualified and less experienced people. Not that they're not good people, not that they're not able people, but to work in one of the most challenging times that we've had, when skills and experience is all the more needed. So I'm just hoping somebody could speak to, I don't have a better frame, how we're feeling about that.
I'll let Javier respond. The one thing I will say is our pools have been incredibly robust with qualified people this year, I have to say. And, some of that's to do with what's going on in the labor market. So, I'll say that.
Okay, thank you.
And I will say that any time that we lose a member of our organization, somebody that we, hired because we believe that they were contributing to the quality education that we strive to provide, is a huge loss. We invest in helping our people grow. We do all of the things, not as well as we could or should, but, that is our commitment. And so anytime that you lose somebody from your team, it sets you back tremendously. So even if we find somebody who is, fully qualified, it is, it's a step back. And, clearly the challenge for us is that we don't know at this point, at so close to the beginning of the school year, we don't know what our losses are going to look like, which just makes it, all the more challenging. If you think of the numbers that Barb just walked through and, different scenarios of how many people may opt for a leave, and if the leave is not available, would choose to resign and go do something, different during this time. That is, and I've said this before to the board, that is, that's a linchpin to our plan, is the ability to staff our schools. And if some of those, some of those worst case scenarios were to play out, we wouldn't be able to staff our schools. So I think that it's, very important for you to understand. And that's why I said that this was a critical part of our presentation, because I think you need to understand the magnitude of our exposure here. And so that's from a sort of just a human resources perspective. And then I think when you think about the loss of, folks that have given years that we hired, or, because we believe that they were contributing and they have been contributing members of our school community, that's a huge loss. And so I can't begin to put a dollar figure or, a feeling, that's how we feel. I can't even tell you how we feel about it. It is, it's a once in a lifetime, I hope, event that we are trying to weather. And that's all we can do.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I think the magnitude of not being able to answer how we feel about it is consistent throughout the pandemic. This is a major concern, and it is of a magnitude of order, as you say, that I'll be holding on to as we move into our conversations this evening. Thank you for answering with candor. I appreciate it.
Mr. Berg, Ms. Bondo.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I am on the 84, the non-AD, Barbara, on the 84 teachers, then they request accommodation. If we don't have any accommodation, they will go to the sick leaves. If I got it right, that's the steps.
No, they actually in general are not qualified to use their sick leave because they're not sick.
Okay, so because if they are not on the ADA, so that means what's going to happen, because they request also some accommodation. So what the case here right now, I just want to understand that part a little bit better.
So what they've requested is a flexible work arrangement.
Okay.
The word accommodation actually relates to the ADA, and so that's how we distinguish, just it's semantics, but that's helpful, more helpful to understand. So these folks, it's possible that some arrangement will be able to be worked out at their building level. It depends whether they're asking to work fully remotely or not. Others will either need to choose to come back to work or to request some type of a leave.
Okay, so if they request a type of leave, so I mean, we have to hire those positions. We need to fill those positions, right? So then it's gonna be a loss of those positions. So we have to fill those positions. So the hiring process right now, because if I do remember, we have 10 FDs on the brief program, and I heard Maria say yesterday, then we 6.5.
Mickey, you're muted.
You got.
Yes. Can you hear me? Yeah. I tried to get the noise out of my house first. Hold on a second. Sorry. Yes. We already had some position and we have to fill. When I look at the presentation yesterday, we have 10 of these for the BRAVE program, I think, spread around, and we have a 6.5, if I remember, from the English learner teachers on the top of what we may have coming up. So how do you feel on those hiring process? Because we want to go to the vote for the hybrid options, but the issue is the staffing on the side. I mean, if we have to wait until we have the enrollment to know how many students will go to the remotely and how many students will be on site, and we don't have any staffing, I just try to be a little more realistic here, to try to see the picture how it's going to look like. Because on the hiring policy, we have 10 FDs on that specific education session that we have to fill, and those EOS students, and we want to bring 4 days a week. We just don't have any layer of specific if we're gonna have enough teachers on the side for those students. So how about are you feeling? How comfortable are you in the hiring process? Because for me, I don't see it's gonna be challenging to try to make it happen right now. And I'm still looking to see if we are ready to open schools in that specific area without coming in the middle of the September, maybe the end of September, that we don't have any staffing to be on the site for those students. So what's your thoughts? Maybe you or maybe the superintendent can answer those questions.
One thing I will say is that those are requests for additional staff to assist. So those aren't replacements for current staff.
Those are, okay.
We do, as I mentioned, we're building a pool for ELL teachers, and I just went and took a look, and we have 16 candidates in that pool.
Okay.
I recognize that it will be hard to fill all these positions. It's fortunate that the student start date has been pushed back, so it gives us a bit more time to hire.
Okay. So if you understand the picture, that we have to know the enrollment first. We need to know how we can have those 84 who ask for flexibility, how many can go to remotely, or how many can ask for leave. And then we will know how many spots then we need to find some staffing to fill.
That's basically right. So we're saying that we believe that the majority of those who have requested fully remote who fall under ADA would go to the remote academy. and then we're going to have a group of others that will, it remains to be seen whether they will return to work or not.
Okay, so I want to look at a picture then. If they have to leave and those places, then we have already students on the side. Who's going to cover? Do we have some sub or some edtech? So who's going to replace those positions on the time being when we hire someone to try to fill up those positions? Those backup, please. Because the kids are going to be already on site, so we're not going to send those kids home and be remotely until we fill out those positions. Are we having a strategy or approach to have a backup in case we have a lot of leaves? Teachers, is really the pandemic time, so it's so uncertain for everybody. We are all human beings, and I really understand the emotion. We have a fear. So that means the fear is all of us. So that's a pressure that we need to think about it to see are we going to be able to have somebody who decide, because we just don't know how many our teacher will leave. We don't have any idea. So that means we have a student and we're sending, but we have any idea how many they will leave and how many they may have some flexible accommodation. So I'm still struggling right now about the program that we're going. If we don't know exactly how many teacher we will have, maybe we're going a little faster. Maybe we have to wait a little bit to go to that system to know how many teacher we can give some flexibility and how many teacher they will leave if they don't have those flexibility. And then we know exactly how many positions we need to. It's going to be difficult for me to accept a place that I know we're sending children without knowing any staffing than we have on the side. Yes.
Let me attempt to answer that.
Yes.
I think first, sort of let's parse this out a little bit.
Okay.
If you don't open school for in-person learning, a good number of those requests go away because most of the people are asking to teach remotely. Okay. So we would de facto be, just granting that wish without having, it would make Barb's life a heck of a lot easier. Right? If you advance the recommendation and open for in-school learning, when you do that is when we will have a better understanding of how many people actually, we can grant leaves to because we know how many remote teachers we need. And also how many that leaves without a remote teaching position that we then need to begin to process. So in fact, waiting will never help. Waiting will just make the problem be looming out there without us actually knowing what it is that that we actually need to figure out. It is incredibly challenging to think about the numbers that Barb laid out if everybody leaves when you make that decision. But until you make that decision, we won't know. So the only option, as I see it, is to say we're not going to make the decision because we're afraid of what the outcome might be, or to say, and that means that kids don't come back to learn in person and, everybody is teaching remotely and they're fine, right? But if you make the decision, then we will actually, start to see what the actual numbers look like. And, I guess, when we talked about what are the things that would make us move to remote learning, we only to date have talked about it in terms of, cases of the virus. Without a question, no teachers is another, no staff is another reason why we would need to move to red.
All right. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, Superintendent. Thank you. All right, Chair. Thank you. I'm done with my questions.
Thank you, Ms. Bondo. I don't see any other hands raised. I don't have questions, but later on tonight we'll touch up on this as we get into the decision period. So if we want to move on to the next section, the budget section, Superintendent.
Last but not least, our Executive Director for Finance, Miranda Fasulo, will talk a little bit about our budget situation.
Great. So good evening, everyone. So what I'm going to do here, you can go backwards a little bit. Yeah, thank you. So what I'm going to do here tonight is just give you a brief summary first of the funding sources that we do have to work with this year. And then I'll talk a little bit about the planned uses of our most significant funding source related to all the efforts that you've heard about over the last, 8 hours last night and a couple hours so far tonight. And then I'll go over some of the potential challenges that will still lie ahead as we look further down the line beyond the fall term. So starting off on a positive note, we've received a coronavirus relief funds allocation from the state of $6.2 million, slightly more than $6.2 million. And that was a formula allocation driven primarily by our student enrollment figures and our student populations data. And it was granted to us by the state as part of a larger $165 or so million allocation that was made to districts statewide, made by Governor Mills from the coronavirus relief funds that the state received from the U.S. Treasury Department. And I think it's important to take a moment to note that we're extremely fortunate that our state and our governor has been able to and has chosen to direct substantial resources to public education in support of reopening schools as safely as possible. Many of the efforts that you've heard you've been hearing about for some time would simply not have been possible without that. So, as hard as this all is, we're all just really fortunate, in a fortunate position here, certainly compared to many other communities across the country. But with that said, a key challenge of this funding that's come up already over the course of the last evening is that the funding ends December 30th. It must be liquidated by December 30th of this year. So obviously that's a very important consideration we're taking into account when making decisions, for instance, to utilize these funds for staffing or for services that we'd like to see ongoing through the whole year. And I'll talk about that again in a little more depth a little later on. An additional funding source that you may recall from the budget process is our CARES Act allocation, which we received word of late last spring. And this allocation is a little more than $1.9 million, with just under $1.3 million already budgeted during the budget process for custodians. And if you recall, if you're part of the budget process, those members of the public who tuned into the budget process who recall that was actually a key factor in our being able to balance our FY21 budget in the first place. But the good news is approximately $650,000 or so remains in that grant as a contingency for unanticipated costs and potentially for essential costs that we decide we need to have continued beyond December 30th. And these funds are actually available through FY22 to the extent we're able to preserve them, which would be an excellent outcome. And then finally, as we firm up plans here tonight and move forward into the year, we may be able to find areas of savings in our operating budget. We can move on to the next slide. So now just to give you a sense of the planned use of the CRF funds specifically, we have our initial budget clustered really in 4 areas. So technology at $2.7 million, community partners at $1.4 million, and by that I mean childcare options and potentially transportation related to getting children to those options. Human resources, and by that I mean everything that Ms. Stoddard went over just now, subs, leave coverage, additional staffing needs, FDs that you've heard about in prior sections of the presentation for special ed, ELL instruction, and other areas that we've talked about. And as well, finally, the last category, facilities modifications and supplies related to facilities, extra PPE, et cetera, and that's $900,000. And to be clear, this is how we've allocated our initial current submission on our first round grant application. We have, thankfully, until September 30th to revise and resubmit, but this was just our initial application to be able to get the ball rolling on some of the key areas that we needed to move on really quickly. But we still do have a lot more work to do, prioritization, a lot more information to gather before we make our final decisions related to this resource, and thankfully we have some time still to do so. You can move on. And just here, just a little bit more detail in terms of what's included in each bucket. So for technology, we have a one-to-one student device plan that you heard about yesterday, staff device refresh, and some software and tech support necessary to distribute and set up these devices. Community partners, childcare contracts, as I mentioned, transportation. Right now, we've got a placeholder in there for potentially the purchase of 4 buses, human resources, building subs, structured temp support, leave coverage, and those FTEs I mentioned before. I'm sorry, that was what I was trying to think of on the last slide, the specials, the increased FTEs for the specials is the other category there. And then facilities, also stuff you've heard about, window replacement, UV lighting, HEPA filters, ionizers and ventilation at Reiki, air purifiers, fans, general supplies, and a placeholder in there for outdoor classrooms as those plans develop as well. And you can move to the next slide. And so finally, looking beyond the fall, as I mentioned, the CRF funding must be spent, liquidated, all that by December 30th. So for our device purchases and facilities modifications, that's okay because they're one-time purchases. But to maintain before and after care as proposed for the fall, to continue with these staffing adjustments as proposed for the fall, we'd be looking at upwards of $3 million in resources needed to continue these services from January to June. A few months ago, we didn't think we'd be getting this $6 million. And frankly, on March 1st, we never, would have dreamed that we'd be where we are today. So in that same vein, we don't know where we'll be on January 1, but I think the important thing here is to recognize that, the CRF resources only get us that far. And as a result, we need to be prepared to potentially make yet another round of difficult decisions come the winter. And we'll, of course, have more information by then, and we'll be able to use that information to guide those decisions. And we will manage, but, I guess the point here is for folks to realize, we're not home free, so to speak. And I just want to make sure that's really clear, that we're clear to everyone about that message up front. So with that, I'll take questions or turn it back to the superintendent.
All right, thank you. Okay, Ms. Bigdor.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Miranda. I think during the Finance Committee meeting last week, I had most of my questions answered, but I did have one follow-up here, just to clarify that the $3.3 million that you're projecting in additional costs for January through June, that doesn't include the $650,000 contingency that we have from last winter, right? The CARES contingency.
The $3.3 million is the cost of those services specifically. If we wanted to use that $650,000 to fund $650,000 of that $3.3 million, we could do that. But it's a cost figure, not a funding side figure.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other questions? I don't see any other hands raised. And I did not have any questions other than what was already shared and what we saw at Finance Committee. So, Superintendent, was that the end of your team's presentation? Was there anything else?
Just setting up what's next. So, Aaron, if you could just pull that back up. So next slide, please. So just recapping where we are, this is the conclusion of our presentation. My recommendation, as you know, is to return to school in yellow hybrid mode with pre-kindergarten through 5th grade transitioning to in-person 5 days a week in October, assuming that I don't need to repeat for you what we've said the conditions would be for that. We're also asking that we delay the start of the school year to September 14th. And then this is new based on information that we discussed yesterday, so that we would remain in this status through early October, and then reevaluate that for the high school and stay in this status through the end of the trimester for middle school. So elementary school, we are proposing to come back to go to full in-person instruction in October, and then at that same time reevaluate whether we can bring additional high school students back for in-person learning, and commit to the trimester reassessment for the middle school. And then, as we've mentioned a couple of times, we can downgrade to red at any time, as is warranted by the state designation, or other conditions such as what we just discussed in terms of the staffing issues and so on. So this is the end of the workshop. We now move over to the board meeting, and then, we are preparing to move forward with communication, whatever communication is appropriate after the board acts tonight. So I would like to thank everybody for their time and patience with us as we worked through a tremendous amount of information over the last couple of evenings. We appreciate everyone's attention and wonderful questions, and I really want to take a moment to thank all of our team, all of the staff that has contributed to it, the people that have been here to answer questions, some of our guests that we had yesterday from outside of Portland Public Schools who gave of their time to also help to make sure that you had a full picture. And I think that's it. And I look forward to your discussion.
Thank you, Superintendent. Before I call the meeting to order, Superintendent, on the PowerPoint that's on our package, right after this last slide that you just shared with us, there's a list of recognizing the many people in the district that contributed to the plan. Several pages, 3 or 4 pages long. But what I'm bringing up, before we thank them once again, there are actually other slides beyond that. Transportation, special ed, IELD. Those, I know that we covered some of that information, but just want to make sure that that was not missed. Because I see it.
We used the presentation from August 4th as the basis for this presentation. So, some of the slides were rehashes from that. And so these are important slides that we thought we might need, and we just kept there for as an appendix, but they're labeled as an appendix.
Okay, appreciate that. So yeah, I guess the last thing before I do call the meeting to order is recognizing the immense number of people that have been working for so many months to put this together. I'm really thankful that we've put these names out as part of the presentation and acknowledged them and recognized them. I think the one thing that's constant from all the communication we've had from the community is the acknowledgement, number one, of the complexity of this, developing this plan, and also the immense amount of collaboration across district staff and certainly community partners. And again, so that I think everyone has been keenly aware of and recognized the value that level of collaboration brings to the plan.